I'm going to go ahead and introduce our panelists. And so first we have Lorielle Broussard Davis McKee, and she is a development executive at Landline Pictures. She joined Landline Pictures after a major career shift from her background in marketing and communications at the City of Atlanta Mayor's Office of Film and Entertainment and her entrepreneurial endeavors with her company, Barack Laveau LLC. And so Lorielle, she has a very special story because she and her brother are actually featured in Go For Yours, which was written about 10 years ago. And I read about Lorielle and another person, Jerome Boykin, who's a good friend as well, on the cover of Black Enterprise. And that's when I was starting Go For Yours, and I was like, I need to interview these people. They have amazing stories, and they picked up the phone and they did the interviews, and we've been rocking since. We did a whole fundraiser in Chicago, and so excited for her to share that story. And then to my left, I have Awah, who is a seasoned technology entrepreneur and software architect. A very cool one, too. A true serial entrepreneur. He has co-founded 5 companies, including Rares, a fintech platform for investing in collectible sneakers. Currently, he is the Chief Data Architect and VP of Enterprise Data Architecture at Yahoo, which is the 3rd largest internet company in the world, where he leads a team of engineers and architects to shape the new data strategy for Yahoo. And someone in here actually has a Yahoo, even though that's still. Some people are still using Yahoo. Was that you guys?
Yes.
Yeah. Very excited.
No shame.
I was telling you a story about that in a little bit.
And then to my far right, we have Hector, who is a co-founder and chief marketing officer of Rare, a first of its kind app that allows users to invest in sneaker culture by buying and trading shares in sneakers. He is also one of the founders of Los Angeles' one and only food truck serving West African cuisine. It's really, really good. It's so amazing. And they are currently transitioning that to brick and mortar. And then last but not least, to my far left, we have Nia Randall, who is the CEO of Black Girls Buy Buildings. I just love that, Black Girls Buy Buildings. And so after a 10-year career in entertainment marketing, Nia Randall left corporate America to pursue her dream of becoming a real estate investor. She co-founded Black Girls Buy Buildings to help rebuild and create housing opportunities for us, by us. And so real estate is so important, and so we'll talk about some of that. But I want you all to know that, having people in this room like this is rare. And so I want you all to soak up all of the information because, they have some amazing stories, and they started out where you are today. And so as you hear their stories, you can learn from them and you can draw inspiration. And so soak up all of this information as I shared earlier. You want to be a sponge and soak up this information because I wish I could have known people like them growing up that look like me, And so they have careers that a lot of people think are not attainable, but they are. And so we're going to talk about that. So my first question for everyone is, what does it mean to go for yours to you?
Wow, it's gonna sound cliche for me. Take over the world. I try to do that every day. It's hard in real life, it's easier on TV. But you gotta set your heights, set your sights, high, and keep trying to climb. Even if you fall down, keep climbing. I think that's as close as I can get to what it means to go for yours. And while climbing, as much as possible, try to reach back down and pull the next generation up.
Yeah, I think similarly, it's just, go for your dreams. Like, go, don't be afraid to do that. Because I think my parents had to sacrifice so much and give up some of their dreams to be practical because they had kids and, had to support their family. And even though that became their dream, when we started going for ours, they were like super scared for us. And they're like, you guys are fearless. And it was like, what do we lose? You know, so I think it's really, you know, being fearless and knowing that even though that for a long time there's been a ceiling, there isn't, and you can break it. And that's what I think everyone up here has probably been doing. You just keep breaking it, and yeah.
So I mean, you guys have said it all, but I'll add to that. Really believing in yourself, right? So there's no reason why whatever you're thinking isn't possible, and just think that if not you, then who, right? Whatever thing you're thinking about solving, someone else has the same pain point. So if you don't do it, what's going to happen is that in a few years, you're going to be like, oh, I had that idea, someone did that. And then you'll be like, man, I wish I'd done that. So believing in yourself and just think if not me, then who? Because, you know, it should be you who fixes the problem, whatever it is.
Absolutely. And just to, I mean, I feel like you guys said everything there's to say. But just believing in yourself, like you said, but also my other thing is, the worst that can happen is somebody tells you no, and it's like, did you die? Like, when I get in my own head, and it's like, okay, like, just have the conversation, or whatever I'm trying to achieve, or whatever door I'm trying to open, just try, and you'll be surprised how far you get. So, yeah.
I just wanted to add a quick thing on the point Hector just raised there about nothing's impossible. You know, again, I'm sure there's a wide diversity of backgrounds in the room here, and some might include, you know, growing up in inner city neighborhoods where you have all these different challenges ahead of you. I think, you know, looking at where I grew up in a third world country that didn't have 24-hour television or the internet for that matter, where I'm sitting at today and the leadership role, as you said, third largest internet company in the world, it's literally the definition of impossible, but it's happened. So just to drive that point home, to Hector's point home, you gotta believe in yourself. If it's not you, then go after it.
Yeah. And kind of going into what you said about coming from a third world country, I want everyone to just share. I always think about, you know, man, this young girl who was shy, quiet, from a small town, predominantly white town, is doing the things she's doing now. So if you guys can take a trip down memory lane, I'll give you guys just like a minute to share, but share where you were when you were, you know, between maybe 16 to 19. Where were you and what were you thinking? What were some of the things you were doing?
I was, I'm born and raised from Chicago, South Side. I went to private school. Most of my friends went to public school, so that was quite a challenge in itself, because I kind of learned quickly who my real friends were. And I remember that was a real struggle for me during high school. I did go to an all-girl, predominantly white high school as well. There were only 4 other Black people in my entire graduating class. So that was that. So going from seeing people that look like me every day, and I went to grammar school with people that look like me, to I'm now the minority, that was a pretty big shock and adjustment, but I had to figure it out quickly to navigate. When I graduated high school, I honestly didn't even want to go to college. Like, I had no interest in really furthering my education. I felt like I didn't need school. I was smart enough. I could figure things out. You know, being a product, somewhat of a product of my environment, you know, I was dating guys that were doing things, so money wasn't really an issue. And it was really, I would say those years were really challenging in terms of me trying to find myself and just trying to figure out what my purpose was. I don't feel like I really knew that, and it showed for sure.
I can go. You want to go?
I thought we were going down the line.
I know.
We're just going to go first. So I'll go. So when I was 16, so like I'm from Cameroon. I was born and raised in Cameroon, and I moved to the U.S. when I was 17, right? So if you think about, you guys are probably what, maybe 15, 16, 17. So think about moving your whole life to a completely new place, you know no one, you have no idea what the school is, you know, at 16, 17, you're coming into your own, you're making your friendships, you're, you know, learning who you are, or you think you know who you are, and then you move to another continent, right? And I moved to Richmond, Kentucky.
Wow.
Well, it was first we went to Boston. Was it's cool. Then like a week later, oh, I'm like okay, sure. And I got there. I was like,
No.
This is different. So being, you know, like I had never seen a computer. I've seen one, but I never actually touched a computer at that point, right? So you know, and I had this dream to be, you know, I like computers too. I was like, yeah, I can be a computer person. Like, you know, I didn't know what that meant. But you know, so coming from that and then to my journey and my path to where I am now, it's pretty, you know, unique, right? So, but it's not that unique because I know other people like myself and Awah who have done, you know, really amazing things. So don't let where you come from limit you to where you can go. And it's easier said than done, but you know, I think that once you know, like you say, I was very shy and quiet, you know, when I was younger, and I think at some point I decided to say, hey, you know what, you know, I can be, you know, come into my own and you know, voice my opinions and be vocal about what I'm thinking. And it's not easy. You find yourself on the way. So don't try to have it all figured out now. Don't give yourself any timelines or any deadlines and say, oh, I gotta do this by this. It's nice to have goals and be motivated, but for you guys especially, you're so young, like really it doesn't matter. Whatever is bothering you right now is not really gonna matter in 5 years.
Yeah.
Or 10 years. Yeah, it's not whatever you think your biggest problem is right now, it doesn't matter. Like you have no reason to be afraid. Anything you're thinking is possible, it literally is possible. So.
Oh man, so I was born and raised in Houston, Texas. And so different story. I mean, when I was 16, I mean, of course I was in high school. I was a popular kid. I had a lot of friends. I mean, I played sports. I played basketball. I worked with the volleyball team. All my friends played volleyball. I was a cheerleader. I had to stop playing sports and cheer most of my years in high school. And I didn't realize how popular I was then. Because I just, you know, you don't know. You just are like, I was in a school with like 3,200 kids. And I had a handful of Black friends, and most of those friends that were Black, I literally grew up with my whole life that went there. They were not the kids that I met in high school. And so I had our group of friends and, you know, was doing my own thing. It was, I didn't know I was popular. I look back and I'm like, oh shit, I was that girl. Like my friends are like, yeah, I'm like, oh. But I mean, I was like always trying to do the most. Like my mom's like, you have 8,000 activities. Like I was that kid. I had a job because I wanted my own money because I was the youngest of 4 kids. Like my mom's like, I'm not buying you those jeans. I'm not buying you those shoes. I'm like, I'm gonna buy it myself. You know, so I was very independent, but I didn't have a license. It was crazy. I did not care about driving. I was spoiled in that regard because one of my friends drove and I was like, I don't need a car. My parents are gonna buy me one, so why get a license? Like that was my theory. So high school, you know, I had a great time. I, you know, learned a lot. And then again, like I was one of few at my high school of Blacks at our school. I went to public school. I went to private school, like middle school, but public school for high. And then I went to Spelman College. And what's really cool, an interesting transition going from where I went to high school and going to school like Spelman is that it's an all-girls HBCU, if you guys are not familiar, in Atlanta. And I get in the, you know, you get in the orientation room. I'm so excited. I had applied to like NYU, that was my first choice. I got rejected, but like early admission. I didn't know I had to reapply for regular. My sister was like, you are so dumb. And I was like, I felt so rejected. And I was like, NYU, like, I don't care. And then so my brother and sisters all went to Howard, and they were like, yo, my brother was like, you should apply to Spelman. I had not visited school. I was like, I have friends who go there. I have friends who go to Morehouse. Applied, got in. I was like, cool, I'm done. Like October, I was like, I'm finished. I'm going there. I'm not doing any more like essays, none of that stuff. And I visited my friend. You know, I stayed with my friends. It was great. Then I went to school there, and that first week, what is interesting is you have your orientation like week, freshman orientation, and you're in a room like this, and they do it all alphabetically, I think, so it's like A's and B's. My last name is a B. So it's like 40 girls, and everyone's like, oh, hey, stand up and introduce yourself. And everyone's got like the same story. Which is kind of like comforting and humbling and interesting all at the same time. Because everyone's like, I was president of this, and I was an international honor society, and I was true, and I played sports, and I was and you're like, oh, me too, cool. Like, I went to all white school, and you're just like, oh, okay, I'm like one of many, and everyone looks different but the same, right? We're all Black, and we're all like, it was refreshing and pretty amazing. And so that was a time for me getting to Spelman and like figuring out, like that was my junior, senior year of high school, and then freshman year of college. I thought I knew what I wanted to do, where I wanted to go to school, and all that just changed. Like I initially when I was 16, I actually wanted to go to Xavier University because my whole family, my parents, aunts, uncles, grandparents, everybody went to Xavier, and I did a summer program there and was like, I hate it. I was like, I don't. Yeah, no, not that Xavier, the one in New Orleans. There's two, yeah. And so I went and I just didn't like it. I was like, So it's interesting. So that changed my whole world. And then it was like, what am I gonna do? So everything changed. What I thought I knew and wanted to do changed in that regard for school. College was never like not an option because my parents were like, yeah, no. And so, it's interesting, just, yeah, so a lot of transformation in those years. And you just like you said, and everyone else, it's just, you don't know what's gonna happen, and so much can change. And what's important then one week is not the next or the next month, so, yeah.
What I was doing in 17?
16?
16?
16 to 19.
I think 16 to 19. I think for me, a little bit of a counter narrative, right? I think I knew exactly what I wanted to do in life when I was 7. And it was so laser focused.
Good for you.
Awah used to sell floppy disk drives with computer games to the neighborhood kids and charge them to play on his computer.
Businessman. I locked in on what I wanted to do, and I actually don't think I have stopped. The main characteristic is continuous learning, right? I taught myself how to write software at a very young age. In certain senses, we're fortunate insofar as I had access to a computer, which is unheard of from where I come from. But that notwithstanding, I was hooked. It's like a really strong drug for me, and I never looked back. And that built in of itself to the point where by the time I was 17, I had founded my first tech company, and by the time I was 19, I had sold it. So it was, I have not stopped since then in terms of the whole continuous learning, in terms of YouTube, right? Hey, I want to know how to write Python.
Yeah.
Just go on YouTube and learn new skills every day. You can learn how to dance on YouTube. Why not learn how to write software? Right? So I didn't have that when I was growing up. So I'm not sure how I learned what I learned, but it's really fortunate to have gotten this far.
That's amazing. And that just shows that you can be any age. When you're growing up, a lot of people say, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? And it makes you feel like you have to wait to pursue your dream, but you can really start being on track for that now. And, when you start early, you get to where you pretty much want to be because you're still learning yourself. And so you might say, today I want to be a lawyer, and tomorrow you might want to be a chef. You just never know, so starting early is really good. So since this is the Entrepreneur Panel, I want to dive a little deeper into what all of you do. I know I shared just a brief description, but we can go from left to right. Just, more about your business and what it is your business does, and then we'll take a walk down, memory lane as far as starting that business and all of that. Or an endeavor.
Yeah. So the name of my company is Black Girls by Buildings. I started it last year. Actually, we just made one is this October? I don't even know what date it is.
Yes,
October.
15th.
Wow, that's crazy. So yeah, this is still new, still learning a lot. But my best friend and I, whose name is also Nia, so we're the Nia duo. And we have been talking about buying a building since we were probably in high school. We grew up together. And because of the pandemic, a lot of things changes with work and all of those things. So we decided to give it a try and see what happens. So last year, we bought some land in Memphis. And then we decided to start looking at other buildings, and it kind of just took off on its own. And then in January, I actually left my job, so I'm doing this full time now. I have rental properties in Chicago. We have land in Memphis and also Houston. It's crazy how my life has kind of come full circle, because I went from kind of like struggling to figure out what I wanted to do. In the beginning, I thought I wanted to be a fashion designer. I went to fashion school for a year. Then I didn't want to go to school. Then I decided I wanted to, I thought I wanted to be a lawyer for a hot second. I was all over the place. So I ended up going to Chicago State. I went to school for marketing. My first job out of school, I actually worked at a construction company, a concrete construction company. Hated it. It's like, nothing about this job is sexy. It's not cute. Like, this is not fun. And now the fact that I have started my own company and I am working in construction, it's like the answer was right there in front of my face the whole time. All the way back then, right?
I want to pause on Nia and ask you to just share the importance of us as people of color of having our own property, buying land. Like, what are some things that you've learned with that?
Oh, so buying holds is when you're basically buying a property and holding onto it. You're making it a rental, or if you don't want to have tenants in there, you're just holding onto it, trying to wait for the market to shift, holding onto it so you can get some equity and then sell it. So that's my go-to strategy. I am starting to do flips. So now we're kind of moving out into Indiana to get some flips going, just to help build some cash flow. Real estate is a great way to build wealth. You can do it by yourself, you can do it with your family, you can do it with your friends. My girlfriends and I actually that I went to college with, we started an investment group just in a group chat, right? Everybody in here I'm sure has a group chat, several, right? So it's like, okay, say in the group chat, everybody let's open an account, right? And you put $50 in every month or every 2 months or whatever you decide. And at the end of the year, see how much money you accrue, and then you can go buy a piece of land. You can buy land on auction sites for as low as $1. We want a piece of land in Memphis for literally $1, and we just have to pay the taxes on it. So for under $500, once we pay the taxes and the fees, we now own a whole lot of land, a complete lot of land in Memphis, right? So there's so many ways that you can invest without having to be a landlord. I am a landlord. It is a lot of work, not gonna lie, but it's a very rewarding journey. I actually have a property manager, so I don't interact with the tenants as much anymore, but I would definitely say that's something that I can keep in my family. I can pass on to my kids. I actually also have been kind of trying to bring in my family as I'm like kind of expanding and growing. So like my mom's getting to retire. So is my dad. So it's like, okay, I'm thinking about ways that I can kind of incorporate their job set job skills and kind of what they can do for my company, right? So I feel like there's just so many avenues that you can be in real estate without just having you need money sometimes, but a lot of times you can use other people's money, right? And I often use other people's money. I started with my own money, but now I'm at a point where I want to do more projects, so that requires more money, and I don't have to stretch myself too thin. I can say, hey, this is what I've been doing. I have a track record, right? Track record is very important. I have a track record, and these are some upcoming projects. Let's have a chat, right? So I feel like at your age, definitely, I wish that I would have, I didn't grow up in a house that we owned, right? I grew up in an apartment. one of my goals is to buy my mom her dream house before I buy myself my dream house, right? So I feel like if I would have had these thoughts and been serious about these thoughts, like back in high school when I was like talking to my best friend about it, but if we had just started putting away $25, right, when we had our little side jobs or whatever, instead of going to the club like we was doing, if we would have just started back then, right, how much money would we have been able to save every year, every 6 months to put towards just a little something, right? And the market was completely different back then. So what would that look like now, right? That was like over 10 years ago. So I definitely encourage you guys to, it doesn't have to be an arm and a leg, but if you have a little part-time job or after-school job or whatever, something to consider. And it doesn't have to always be real estate, right? Whatever you're interested in. You can invest in a lot of things, right? So don't limit yourself, but start thinking about those things now, and it'll just help you prepare yourself. Like when you graduate college, you might not have any debt because you might have invested in some type of stock or whatever. So, yeah.
That's good.
It's brilliant. So a couple of nuggets I took out of that before I talk about myself is knowledge is power, right? I feel like I learned something new today. Get landing.
Same.
I'm
like, I need that option.
I'm like, what did he say? I
Yeah, we'll
so that's the first thing, right? The second nugget that I took away from that is that you create wealth through investing. It doesn't matter what you invest in. Real estate's one type of investment, but whatever you do, investing helps you create wealth, and that's something that's been true of my own life trajectory. Having said all that, I'm going to talk very briefly because I give Hector an opportunity to go. At least give Hector an opportunity to talk about it from his perspective. We founded a company together with 2 other partners in the middle of the pandemic, April of 2020, the focus was, how do we create a marketplace where access to people that look like us is limited because the price point is so high, like a hype drop or some really rare sneakers that could go anywhere from like $4,000 or $5,000 all the way up to in one very unique circumstance $1.8 million for a pair of shoes. How do we create access to that kind of marketplace? And the general idea that we ended up selling on is fractional ownership. I don't have to own the whole thing, but I can own a piece of it. And just to piggyback on the whole concept of investment, you buy low, you sell high, right? You can buy a whole shoe, hold on to it for a month or two, and the price goes up and you get it offloaded on StockX. You make a couple $100. That's investing. But you don't need the whole shoe to accomplish that. If you bought let's say that example I just gave you, you made 25%, right, of whatever you invested in it. If you bought a small slice of that shoe, say 10% of the shoe, and it went up in value, you're still making 25%. It's just based on the small amount of money you invested, right? So if you had $25 that you set aside and you invested in it, and that $25 became, $35 or $40, you're still making a net gain. And if you were to scale that up to a few $1,000s, the return on investment is still the same. Anyway, without going too deep into that, that's what we started over the summer. But prior to that, I guess I think it was probably said in the bio, one of the best ways to characterize me is like a serial entrepreneur, meaning I start, build companies, get them to a certain state, and exit, meaning sell the company or in one really unique case, prepare the company to go public, to be sold in the public market. That I find the most amount of joy in building new stuff, like that space where you're innovating. You have that moment in time where you're like, no one else is doing this, and it's magical. And to me, that feeling is what gets me up in the morning. I was gonna say it's what gets me up at night, and that would be accurate because I would work late at night. But the metaphor is what gets me up in the morning. Just to kind of like flip on the other side, my background is, I've had an opportunity to work in startups that either I've built myself or I've collaborated with others to help get off the ground. But I've also had the good fortune of working for large enterprises like Disney, Sony, and it's given me a very unique perspective of what it means like to work with 100,000 colleagues and what it means like to work with 3 other colleagues, right? The dynamics are very different. Those experiences, actually, there's some things you can learn from working in a large organization that you can take to a small organization and vice versa. So, I can talk about this all the time. I'm going to stop here. If you have any questions about what, hey, should I go the entrepreneur route or should I go the corporate route? They have the pros and the cons. And corporate is safe. You usually get paid a good amount of money. I won't tell you guys what I work a year, but it's comparable to what some of the artists make a year in salary, right? So basketball, acting, and music is not the only way out, right? You can reach really high heights in corporate space. So that's number one. Number two, let me go do my own thing. Is perhaps it's not so glamorous in like your check that you get, your salary. Mostly because you're not getting a check or salary, right? Because you're doing it yourself and you have limited investment. Maybe you get lucky and you go OPM and you use other people's money. But that's not always true, right? But the payoff is dramatic. If you imagine the folks that started at Google, they probably started with little to nothing, right? Probably worked for over a year, not earning a salary. They're all billionaires today, right? So that's kind of like the trade-off that you got to make, make a decision on.
Yeah, speak a little louder. Yeah, some of the people on the thing said just a little louder.
I think I can talk now.
Yeah. They said specifically purple sweatshirt, so. But Nia, you got a heart.
Oh. You can come a little closer too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm gonna say it.
Are they like, hi everybody?
I will. I'll project from here on out. See, I did that and then I went.
You went low.
Yeah.
So wait, we're talking about what do we do now?
Yeah.
Man, I've had like 10 careers, no lie. This is the life of entrepreneurs, I think, too.
Yeah.
What I do now, I work in film and television, and I am a development executive. Do you all know what producers are? Not music, but film and TV. Do you know what it means to be a film and TV producer? Well, I'm just gonna ask you, what do you think it means?
Like a person who like puts together like the scenes and stuff together and creates it kind of seem more seamless.
Kind of. So what I'll tell you, because I didn't even know, oh my gosh, don't tell my age. Like 10 years ago, however, when I used to work in costume design, and I've started a clothing line, that's how I know Erika, but right now, so I'm in the producing space. There's several types of producers, right? I'm a creative producer, which is someone, we work in development. So my company, we have a certain mandate, which is just something that's specific that we're looking for. We look for content for a 50+ audience. It's inspirational, aspirational, uplifting, entertaining, rom-coms, comedies, buddy comedies, no dramas, things like that. So we literally take an idea, people pitch to us ideas, writers, agents pitch ideas to us, or we get scripts that are already written that people think that will work for us. And we read them, I read a ton, every week. ton, and that can be scripts, books, just ideas, looking at decks, all of that. And we do, like kind of what you're saying, we put the movie together. So we work with it from literally like the idea to the end movie getting into the theater. And so, yeah, that's, I mean, basically what I do. But the development part is really fun. And if you like to read, because my niece who's 16 was like, you have the coolest job. I'm like, I mean, like I didn't know. I love to read my whole life. I didn't know it would lead me here because I didn't know what this job was and that it existed in this. I knew the name of it, but I didn't know that it did this, And so we make movies, we make TV shows, and it's really fun and it's exciting, and we get to hear ideas, and sometimes it can be boring because we have to read stuff that sucks, but you become really, really great and fast at reading, writing, hearing things, filtering things for what you're looking for. There's other types of producers, some that are just financial, that come in with money to invest. You've got some that are writers that will be attached to a project because they're not getting enough money. So they'll be on as an executive producer. Like you now look at the credits when you see movies and you might see like 10 executive producers or 6. And some of those people will be like the writers, and you'll see, and you're like, oh, it's because they got an extra fee there because they couldn't get it with their writing, the script. So yeah, that's what I do now. It's what's interesting about making movies and TV shows. It's a hybrid of like entrepreneurship and corporate, because my boss, who I work for, had her own company. She was an executive for 25 years in film industry. She works as president of ABC Films, or CBS Films. She created it. I mean, she was a Sony exec, all these different companies. She was an agent at CAA, worked for all these big companies, and then left 9 years ago and was like, I want to produce my own stuff, and I'm going to raise money, because she had a lot of relationships. And she was able to raise a small development fund of like a few $1 million, which is not bad at all. And she had one employee at the time, and was able to look for projects and see stuff that she liked. And she wanted to produce and make movies, make TV shows, and she did. She made Mary Shelley. She made Brian Banks. She did Las Vegas, which is kind of in the space we're in now. But and then now our company Landline, which has been around for almost 2 years, started with a bigger company coming to her saying, I see that you're good at this. We want to hire you to run this small label that does this specifically. And so she went from corporate to become an entrepreneur, and then now it's kind of like a hybrid. So it's really, and it's cool for me because I've been an entrepreneur where I'm not making any money. You're making money, but it's all going back to your business. And you're like, how am I going to eat? But everything, it's full circle. But then seeing her and, how this hybrid works. And a lot of people, like there's tons of producers and people that are in content creation in the film and TV industry. And that's how they start winning. And the money is like real. Like, my mother-in-law asked me, I think earlier this year, and she's like, how much money, like, what do you producers make? And I was like, well, I'll just give you an example. I don't make this right now, but a guy that's a producer on a film that we just shot early this summer, he came on, he's done about 4 films, maybe 5 now, he's on another film. His quote, which is regular, but like, you don't always get that. His quote is $1.5 million. Per film. And that, when I say he's done, like, by the time we did our movie, we shot at the end of July, top of August. That was like the 3rd film he did, and this is not the pandemic. So he was like one of the few out there, and now he's very great. He's very good at what he does, and he has a lot of relationships, which is what we were talking about earlier. And my business is like hugely based on relationships, and a lot of them. One thing that I have to remind myself over and over from every job I've had, literally. And every business I run, is that some relationships are transactional, and that is okay. And it's a huge lesson that I've learned and have to remember every day in my job now. Because we deal with agents all the time that are trying to get actors hired or writers hired or directors hired or whomever, and they need information from us, and we need information from them. And so yeah, so that's like a little bit of what I do on a daily basis now.
Okay.
like, I can go into later, maybe what I used to do.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Wow, all these great stories.
All of these
I
amazing
know,
stories.
amazing. So, like Awah mentioned, so right now, what I'm working on is this concept company called Rares. So we co-founded this company with 2 other people in April of 2020. So Rares is a marketplace, a place where you can, invest in sneakers as an asset, right? So talk about investing in real estate. If you think about investment, you're always looking for something that's valuable, and that value increases over time. Some of you might know that if you buy shoes, if you buy Nike shoes, if you ever use the sneakers app, or if you might have heard someone talk about it, Travis Scott drops a shoe. Oh my God, everyone wants to get that shoe. It costs maybe $120, and it's sold out in a minute. And then the next day it's on eBay for $1,500, right? And this is very common. This happens all the time. And there's value in some of these assets because they're limited, and only certain people have them, and people want to acquire them just to sell it, not to really wear it. If you think about investing and how we came about this concept, traditionally people have always invested in the stock market and also things like art, right? So very wealthy people buy, expensive art, and they hold on to it for years, and then they sell it back later on for a lot more money. And if you think about some certain shoes, they're essentially artwork, or they're memorabilia. So something Michael Jordan wore when he had the flu and played in the game, and that's never going to happen again. He's who he is, and that shoe has value because Michael Jordan wore that shoe. The shoe that he mentioned that was sold for $1.8 million was what Kanye wore at the Grammys in 2008. That was made only for Kanye. At that time, he was the first non-athlete to have a deal with Nike, so that shoe is really valuable because Kanye's career has kind of gone to span beyond music. He's a creator. He's done things with Nike, with Adidas, with the Gap. So that value, that shoe is a cultural piece, right? And if you look at the entire shoe space and sneakers, for example, the reason why they exist today, what makes them so valuable, is really about Black culture, right? So when Jordans came out in the late 80s and the 90s, they were being sold for like $60 a shoe. No one really bought them. Until Black kids started wearing them and making them look cool. A little story. I see a couple of you wearing Air Force Ones. So when Nike released the Air Force One, it was doing so poorly, they were going to stop making them. They were going to this is useless. No one's wearing the shoes. We're going to discontinue the shoe. And there was one store in Baltimore that was the only store selling Air Force Ones. For whatever reason, people in Baltimore love that shoe. And Nike was like, we don't know what's going on here. This one store keeps ordering more and more of the shoes, and we're trying to kill them. So, well, let's go market to this city and see what they want. And who's in Baltimore? Who's buying these shoes? Well, it's Black kids in Baltimore who are buying these Air Force Ones. And it's one of Nike's most profitable shoes today because Black culture made it popular. So if you think about that and then bringing it to today's world, it's one of many things that Black culture makes popular but doesn't really capitalize on, because now it gets more pricey, it gets more expensive. In real estate, about gentrification, it's happening all around us. A neighborhood is cool because of the culture around it, and then people moving and buying up the neighborhood, then it becomes more expensive, and then people who made it cool can no longer be in that neighborhood. So same things happening in many spaces. So, but however, we find ourselves in a time where you can use technology to your advantage, right? We're in a space where people invest in crypto, people invest in all kinds of things. So we said, why don't we create a way for people to invest in sneakers? The asset is a sneaker. You can buy and share in the asset. The asset is a valuable asset. Over time, it's going to appreciate, and you can also, the same way you invest in sneakers, invest in the stock market, buy shares of sneakers. And for most people, a lot of young kids, they're investing in what they know, right? So our tagline is invest in the culture, right? So you're investing in what you know, because there's, some of you probably know this, artists that you find out through SoundCloud, through whatever other means you listen to that are gonna be dope artists. And I'm like, I don't know who that artist is. And then I remember walking by, this is for the pandemic, and I saw a line for a show. I'm like, who's this performing? I had no clue who he was. Some 18-year-old kid, they all look alike, but he was really popular, right? So kids know who's gonna be popular before even the mainstream knows. So if you understand this kind of thinking and you understand that, hey, everything that's going to be popular, I probably knew about before you guys knew about it, because it's just my generation. We think about these things all the time. You know, now you can actually use that knowledge to your advantage, right? You might not be able to invest in Tesla stock because you don't understand what Tesla does, what maybe you do. But, you know, IBM, I don't know, what did they do, right? You know, so I'm going to buy IBM stock, or I can buy this shoe. I know you should buy IBM. So I can buy the shoe, and I can actually, you know, most people buy the shoe, hold onto it, then flip it online, sell it on eBay, sell it on a platform. Or instead of doing all that, I just buy a share of the shoe, and I'll sell same mechanism. Someone else doesn't work for you. You buy a share of the shoe, then when they sell the shoe, your shares appreciate in value. Hopefully, it's an investment, so you can always lose money as well. But you know, take that concept and turn it into a digital place and a digital marketplace, and that's kind of what we've done with Rares. One thing that I wanted to touch on is the idea of your network and who you know, right? So someone told me this a while ago, and it always stuck with me. And maybe this is, you know, this is for all of us in the room. I was thinking about making a move, and I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna, you know, I don't know the right people. I don't know what's gonna happen. And he told me, he said, everything you need to get to where you need to go to is currently in your phone, right? Mm-hmm. You might think, oh, I need to meet some person that's gonna like give me, like, no, it's probably most likely, I'm sure for all of our stories, it's always like a friend of a friend, you know, someone that you had met at a party for like 5 minutes and didn't think of anything of them, and then later on you found a connection, right? So everything you need to get to where you need to go to, you probably already know them, right? You know, so think about your network, who you know, who you're around, and don't underestimate anyone in your network, because the idea of Red wasn't my idea. It was a good friend of mine's idea. But he said, hey, I have this idea. What do you think? I respect your thought process. You know, help me think about this. And I go, oh. And Michelle's kind of like, I don't know about this. And I'm like, well, but why not? And then we start thinking about it. And he goes, well, we don't know anything about engineering. Who do you know that could, you know, build this platform? And I said, hey, Awah. And Awah says yes. Crazy idea? Sure, I mean, I'll build it. You know, so he comes on board, and that's how, you know, companies get built, right? That's how great companies work. You know, it's always about someone knowing the right people, knowing the right person, and it's not going to be anyone that's, you know, because we tend to underestimate the people we know because we think, oh, well, they can't possibly know that.
They hang out with me.
They hang out with me. How can they possibly know, right? So, no, so the people you know, your network is, you know, they say your network is a net worth. It's really important to think about that. So it could be a family friend, it could be your friend, it could be someone you haven't talked to in 5-10 years, and they went up to somewhere else, and then you reconnect with them, and then you go, oh wow, what are you doing now? And then, you know, like your childhood friend was there all along, and you guys stopped to talk about the idea, but you didn't do anything about it until later on in life. So always think about it. I met Awah through another mutual friend who has nothing to do with a business, but you know, he introduced me to Awah like years ago, and we always just were connected, and then now we're working together in many capacities, right? So, but it was never my plan to say, hey, I'm gonna meet a guy who can help me when I have an idea for a company to engineer it. It just happened. Like, you know, you become friends and then you work together. So the other thing I want to touch on a little bit was just my other, you know, I think we all have like multiple careers and multiple things going on.
Before you switch to
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about what you do at Rare?
Oh, what I do? Oh, yeah. So at Rares, so I'm the chief marketing officer, right? So it's my goal to go out and talk about Rares as a brand and get people to understand what we're doing and get people to know the company.
That makes sense.
What is how did I get to that place, right? So I've had an expansive career in corporate America as well, right? So your entrepreneurial journey is more of a mindset. So it doesn't matter where you are. If you're always thinking about innovative ways, innovation, good companies really do this well, right? So every company like Google, Apple, they're big companies, they're big corporate companies, but internally they have a culture of innovation, of entrepreneurship. So thinking about ways
They all started out like that.
They all started out like that, exactly. So you know, one thing I always tell people who are, you know, say, hey, are you an entrepreneur? What does that mean? I'm like, yeah, it sounds glamorous, but it's really not for everyone, and that's okay. Right, sometimes you go become an entrepreneur, you actually fail at it, and you go back to your corporate job, but you're better off at your corporate job because of what you've learned at your entrepreneur endeavor. Yeah. So it's okay to not be an entrepreneur. It's okay to not be the one that starts these things, because for, you know, if everyone was an entrepreneur, everybody would be broke because no one's going to be able to buy this thing. Right? So every entrepreneur has that story where they were, everyone thinks you're doing so great and it's so glamorous, and you're like, man, I can't even keep the lights on past tomorrow or past next week.
It's not.
Yeah, it's a lot of hard work. We worked for a year with no pay, right? Throughout the pandemic, just building the app. But this week, little plug, we raised $4 million.
Yeah.
So someone believed in the idea that that's crazy, and said, here's $4 million. Well, not someone, a lot of people, a lot of investors. Go do it and scale it. And for that to happen, it wasn't just me, it was our whole team, helping build the product, helping market the product. We have a CEO who is on TV or talking to anyone who can talk to about the product. We have a COO who is out there, talking to investors and raising money, and that's what he does well. And we all come together as a team and complement each other. However, no one has just one skill set, right? So Awah doesn't give himself enough credit. He says he's an engineer, he writes code, but he's really good at strategy and thinking about what the next thing could be for a company. So he comes to Awah with an idea and say, hey, this is a bottle of water, and next thing, by the time he leaves, he tells you it's going to become the ocean, and it's going to be worth $10 billion. Like, what do you think about that? So he's really good at thinking about scaling things, and that's really important to have. So it's not just one thing that you end up doing. So whatever skill you learn, sales, marketing, operations, organizing stuff, networking, these are all really valuable skills to take with you. And even if you're in a corporate world, if you get a traditional job, there's always ways to innovate, to be entrepreneurial, and you don't have to do one thing. You can always do something. That main thing is paying the bills, keeping you employed, keeping you sane, and then you have your passion. And sometimes you have to do that for a while before your passion turns into your main thing, right? Like you did that with your job. Yeah. We've done this several times. We started something. Erika's done this, countless times. You start with your passion, and you find a way to grow it and make it valuable. Yeah. But yeah, so that's. And then I was gonna plug so African Chop, right? So we're a food truck, or we used to be a food truck. That's another thing that I came to LA, moved to LA from Vegas about 5-6 years ago. And LA has a lot of food trucks everywhere. There's food everywhere. It's LA. It's all kinds of food. And I'm like, well, where can I find the food I ate growing up? And I can go to this little place in Inglewood, but be careful. Get there at this time. Don't go when it's so dark, or they're not open. And I'm like, well, anywhere you go, you can have you can get Thai food in any city in the country. Thai food, right? Chinese food. You can get Indian food. You can get some places Jamaican food. And I just said, well, why can't you get African food wherever you go, like easily? And when I say, if not you, then who? I had a friend who was like, yeah, I've thought about this idea of a food truck, but I've never really done it, and I don't know, how to really grow that. I'm like, oh, that's a great idea, you should do it, and I encourage her. And then a few months later, I go, what happened to the food truck? And she goes, well, I'm still thinking about it, but I need a partner, I need help, I'm like, what? I know about business a little bit, let's do it, right? Let's what,
He's
what's
not
the
giving
worst?
himself enough credit.
What's
MBA, Master's of Business Administration.
so
He knows more about business.
So what's the worst that could happen, right? And again, this my initial plan was I'm gonna give her some money, she's gonna run a food truck, and then we'll be rich. Yay. That's what it's gonna be 3 months will be But then I found myself very passionate about the idea. I found myself, actually in the kitchen on the food truck for like years, just working every day, waking up early, being on my feet 24 hours. And people are like, dude, you have like 8 degrees. Why are you doing a food truck for? And I'm thinking to myself, well, I can see the vision where this scales out. I think about how Chipotle started out, and there was one guy. So quick story, if you guys probably all know what Chipotle is. When he started Chipotle, he started it to fund another idea. He was gonna have this really nice fancy restaurant, and while he was trying to get the money for that, he said, I'm gonna do some burritos on the side and then make some money and then do my fancy thing, right? So he started selling burritos, and and he found out, wait, I'm making so much money doing this, and it would be dumb for me to leave this thing and go try to find money to do something else when this thing's already working. And over time he raised more money, and Chipotle is Chipotle today. Chipotle is a very, very profitable company. But the CEO and founder of Chipotle for a long time had this guilt because he kept thinking, well, I really wanted to do a fine dining restaurant. And it took him a while to get over that idea that he had failed, right? So he was successful, but in his mind he had failed because he didn't actually do what he wanted to do initially. And, so I love hearing these stories about entrepreneurs and reading about how they came about to be where they are. But, again, just to say that whatever you think is random could turn into something that's really cool, really different, really, really awesome. And for African Chop today, we are looking at a brick and mortar space. We're going to transition to that in Inglewood, hopefully. So, and I can see that scaling too, right? So you can wear both hats. You can wear multiple hats. I always say about jack of all trades, master of none, and that's okay, right? You can't be an expert at everything, right? You can be good at many things and master of one, but really good at several other things, right? So that's okay.
That's good. So I have one last question and I'll open it up because we have probably about a good 20 more minutes. And so one thing, especially with Awah and Hector, that I've admired is, when I saw the success of Rares, I was like, this is great, but I've also seen you guys take some L's, and so if everybody can share within a minute, just an L that you experienced, a loss, and how you overcame that loss. Because a lot of times we see people in their glory, we see the finished product, but we don't know what it took to get to that finished product. And so if you could share that and just how you overcame that.
30 years overnight success. Took 30 years to build it, but it was overnight success though. I don't know, I think
Remember, speak up.
Oh, yeah. Soon. What happened there was I just put more bass into it, but the ball was so I think I don't know why. I'm talking about the loss, the highest one possible, but for me, the biggest one was probably in 2007, 2008. Very, 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 very painful. Very painful time frame. Given that back then, probably some of you were not old enough to realize what was happening, but that was the first global financial crisis where the real estate market really brought down the global economy. I had joined, this is not a company that I founded, but I joined early on as the Chief Technology Officer for a fintech company back then that it was a transformation job, right? So they were working on going in a particular direction with the technology, and at the time, the technology was not as good as it could have been. And they brought me on, and within a month, turned that company around. And I joined, I want to say I joined in 2006. And so within a month, turned the technology around and then raised money for the company. And then actually started seeing the company grow month over month. We're doubling performance in terms of revenue, profit, everything, quarter over quarter. And then 2008 hit, right? So it's a fintech, and to be clear what that is, it's a financial technology company. There are lots of fintechs today, like things like if you use Venmo, that's a fintech. It's in the same space, right? Cash App, those are all fintechs. This company was a fintech as well, and we were set to go get to the next level, and the global financial crisis happened, and money wasn't moving. And like most fintechs, including Visa, which is probably the largest fintech in the world, make money when money moves through their network. We're no different. So money stopped moving. Our operating expenses were actually quite high, and so we were burning through money a lot faster because we weren't bringing in the regular revenue that we used to our operating expenses. And so what ended up happening was, anyone that knows me personally would know this about me. I'm really passionate about my team. I don't really think of people as working for me as much as they're working with me. And those are the people that I'll go to bat for first, second, and third. And you know, what ended up happening is I stopped taking a salary in the company just so I can keep my team. I sold my car just so that I can keep my team. I moved out of my apartment just so that I literally, as our mutual friend, I was living on his couch just so that I could keep my team. And the company, what we were literally trying to do was we knew that the financial crisis was temporary. The economy was going to pick back up. All we had to do was survive. And, you know, I want to say 2011, 2012, we ran out of gas and we had to shut it down. And it was really, it's probably one of the biggest L's and probably the most, very vulnerable, painful part of my professional experience. And that loss wasn't what made it painful. What made it painful was that we were number one in that particular space that we were. We were number one amongst our competitors, but we didn't necessarily raise as much money as some of our competitors with the lesser quality product did. They did, so they survived longer. And within 6 months of us shutting the company down, not our next competitor, number 3, sold for about $380 million.
Wow.
That hurts.
That hurts.
Oh
I didn't lose that much.
This doesn't count all the money that I actually lost as an investor during that time frame too. So
Yeah.
Wow.
That's a big one.
That's a huge loss.
But moral of the story is, you're down on the ground, probably got some dust kicked in your face. Get back up and keep pushing. We'll push. I did. Whereas literally just announced through press releases that we raised $4+ million, and we're doing well. That's an experience that will crush. How am I coping with it? Therapist. But it's something that will crush most people, and I think to some extent it did crush me. But the key is to keep pushing.
Yeah. I can talk about ours. I talked about it briefly. It's not as serious as that sounds like. It was a huge L as did, but when we, my brother and I, been in business since we were kids. Literally selling candy on a bus and like he's throwing parties and things like that. He's older than me and I always was like, ooh, I want to do that too. And did it, and kind of did it better, but only because you learn from your mistakes. And he was older, so I was like, I'm gonna do it like this. But then we ended up partnering and starting our own business, which we won in 2007, 2008. But that's because we were in line with the president that was getting elected. We had a clothing line that was, and we were also raising money for the campaign. So we were winning, but a lot of people were losing because the economy was tanking. We started another clothing line, literally called Yours Founder right after Barack the vote. And we were like, yeah, we were like making cuts. We were like, I was an art major in concentration in fashion design. So it was my dream. This is what I wanted to do. And he's like, yeah, you take the reins. I'm gonna go back to writing, but I'll help like design. And we had designers and we custom made t-shirts and we lived downtown LA and you know, everything. And it was great. And we were in that zone and kind of ignorant to like what was going on around us, even though we knew, but we were winning. We made over $1 million in like 10 months off of t-shirts and sweatshirts. And, you know, for like that's what we were traveling, that's how Erika, we were traveling around the country doing events and promoting. And the reason we started that company, Barack the Vote, was only because we wanted to help the president, Barack Obama, become the president of the United States. And so we were just so in that world that we didn't really step out of it. And then, so we got investors when we tried to get investors with Barack the Vote, and nobody, he's not even president, blah, blah, y'all are crazy, this is so stupid. My mom even was like, you should make Hillary shirts. Even my parents doubted us. We were like, we're not doing that. We're not, you know, we're not in it for the money. money, I mean, at the time. So, we created a whole new line, and then we thought it was brilliant. It was called Yo-Town. It was a play off of Motown, and it was like the same logo as Motown, the old school, and we had different cities. It's really, really cool. And this is when, this is before you have your, now it's so different. Oh my God. We had to create our own website back then, literally, trying to do what you do. And I am not, I'm smart in a lot of things and that, but, we had to figure it out and we did it. But, in e-commerce before there was Shopify, which runs every platform now, we literally had to, figure this stuff out and, carts and attaching and have other people do it. And it was nuts to think about now, but in 2007, 2008. And so, we had this other business. We started in 2009. Barack Obama got elected. It was like, yeah, we won, it's great. And we were ramping down all of those things and started a new clothing line and had an investor, money that we had and got to do all the things we wanted to do. And it was like, nothing is selling. Nothing is selling. Nothing is selling. Nothing is selling. And it was like, done, nothing's selling. We had an engine behind us called Now the President. We had a campaign, a whole thing. It wasn't just us, and something that you said earlier, you never know who you're gonna go into business with. It was my brother, literally, and we had knocked down dragon fights, but it was because of frustration. It was just like, oh my God, I don't have a job now. I've been doing this company. We left our jobs. He went back to writing and we had to call it. You gotta call it when it was we're failing. Dude, we gotta call it. This shit is over. We cannot put any more money into this. I don't know how to pay my bills. I gotta go back to costume. I gotta find a job. And the thing we spoke about earlier before the panel started is just, pride. And, when you fail at something like that, when you're on such a high, you gotta just pick your face up and keep it moving. When I tell you, on a high, she said, we were on the cover of a magazine, we were doing a lot of amazing things. That magazine came out January of 2009, I think, or February, and we were failing. We were literally with our other company, trying to launch and then failing, and had to deal with that. We had to close everything, shut it down. He was kind of fine because my brother's a writer, so he didn't really want to do clothing. And so for me, it was really, it was even harder. But I literally, the first job I took, I was like, yo, I went and was a PA for the BET Awards. Sounds fun, but when you're running a company for the last 2 years and you're on the cover of a magazine and people are writing articles and stuff about you, and then you're I'm gonna just run and get you coffee. Cool. I'm gonna get you. What do you need? You know what I'm saying? It was really, and I didn't care because I was I need a job. And some of these, your network is your net worth. I hit up my girl who worked for BET, yo, I need a job. I was I don't care what it is. And she was oh, I got you. You want to work the awards? I was sure, cool. And I did that, and I just, it was in my head, the back was who's gonna see me? Oh my God. What does this look like? But I was I don't care. I have to make money. And I have to just go forward. And, that was 2009, 2010, got back in the groove. It was an L for a while, and it was, the humility, the pride, that was the more hurtful thing. We had to pay back the money. We paid back the loan. Personally, we had to come out of our pockets over the next 3 years or 5 years, maybe. I don't know how long it took us. And personally pay back the loans that we had of the investors. And, it taught us a lot of lessons, and we picked ourselves back up. Thank God there was 2012 when we did it again. But we did it smarter. We did Barack the Vote, that company, in 2008. We did it again, but that wasn't the only thing we were doing. In between that, my brother had started a different company, Purple Stuff, which was content and a sketch comedy show. We started doing more things in line with what we still wanted to do, and did our businesses, what we talked about, working, okay, we gotta make money still, but I wanna do this, but I had to balance it, right? So, that was a huge L though, for
It sounds like it.
yeah.
For us.
I've been running through my mind about which ill I should share. Since my company's only been in business for about a year, some not huge like you guys on the financial side, but some small L's. Like when I first thought I could manage properties while living in LA and manage properties from Chicago, I thought, you know, I have my brother to help me out, and I was trying to keep in the family, and it did not work. It did not work at all. I was constantly, it felt like I was being hazed. Like every day it was something else, I'm getting calls, I'm getting texts. So then I had to like, you know, make a decision to find a property manager, and it like definitely changed my life. Then I was also thinking about when I first moved to LA in 2013. So I left the construction company because I hated it so much and quit my job, moved here, no plan, no job. I'm just going to LA. I don't know what I'm about to do, but I'm going. I want to work in entertainment. And I thought, that's good enough, right? I have always kind of been able to like figure something out and land on my feet in Chicago. Like I was pretty well connected. So I figure I'm cute. I can do this. No. Everybody in LA is cute, right? Everybody's light skin with curly hair. It's like, you're not special. You're not special. You're not special. So I was unemployed for almost a little over a year when I first moved here. And it was a very humbling experience. I was a PA on shows. I was a dog walker. I was a personal assistant to this crazy lady in Beverly Hills. But my goal was I wanted to work in entertainment. I wanted to do marketing entertainment. And I refused to take I was taking jobs because I had to eat, right? But I didn't want to take a real job unless it was what I said I came here to do. So when I got the call, I registered with all these temp agencies. And I finally got the call to take over somebody's maternity leave. And that company was Warner Brothers. And that's where I ended up working for almost 8 years. But for a solid year, I really felt like a failure. And it got to a point where I had to pack up all of my belongings, and I was going home for my birthday, and I really thought, like, this is it. Like, I didn't make it. I failed. And I'm just gonna have to move back in with my grandma because I don't have anything left. Courage, yeah. Living in the basement. Okay.
Me too.
So yeah, I would say that was probably. I turned things around. I'm here to talk to you guys today. I've been living in LA for 8 years. So I made it, right? And then I ended up starting a company and all that. But persistence. It was a lot of tears. But just believing in myself, believing that I could do it, and really just not wanting to. There was just something in me that was just like, even when I was thinking I was gonna have to move back to Chicago, and I didn't want to tell anybody, right? I was embarrassed and just a flood of emotions. And then I ended up figuring it out, right? And just using my network, which everybody has talked about here, and I made a call to a relative that I hadn't talked to in a very long time, and it was like, hey, I thought I could do this on my own, but I do need help. And she made a call, and it was like, okay, well, I can get you a job on the show for a couple months. And it was like, oh, that all I had to do was open my mouth and like ask for, what, just tell people what I needed help with. And I feel like that was the biggest lesson for me, because I am very stubborn. I think I can do everything by myself. I don't like to ask for help. Last point, so I did start my first company in college. I was a event planner. I did weddings and corporate events. And I thought I was gonna be J-Lo from, what was the movie?
Oh my God.
I thought like, I got this. Yeah, she was an event planner. I think it was called The Wedding Planner. The Wedding Planner. And I thought I was gonna be this huge, wedding planner. I'm gonna be in all the magazines and doing all these things. And I booked my first wedding. It went really well. I was really excited. And then I decided, I got this. This is easy. And I accepted a project that was way too big for me to do by myself, right? And I had no experience. I had no team. It was just me. I'm in here hot gluing flowers and trying to it was a absolute disaster. And so that was my last wedding event. That was it.
Second and last.
That was it. like being an entrepreneur. I think I was like 19 at the time.
Oh.
Yeah, that was fun times. Yeah.
So I'll go real quick. So, this L involves you. You're taking too many L's. So my biggest L to the Awah. So we had another company we had started in 2016, 2015. It was me, Awah, and another guy, Trevor, kind of started this, and I kind of joined the team. And I still think it's a really dope concept, and I still think that maybe one day we can revive it somehow. So there's still that hope in the back of my mind.
I know it's a dope concept.
Yeah.
It's timing.
Yeah, it was the timing. So we put a lot of time working on this for over a year, right? Put money in, put time in, and we were close. I think we were pretty close. We had investors lined up. We had partnerships that were going to happen and really get us our first proof of concept out there. I had a friend from my network who happens to be one of our co-founders of Rares now, but at the time we worked for another company.
I think the theme of today's network.
Yeah, network, yeah. So at the time, it was just a friend I knew, and he worked at another company, and I said, hey, I'm working on this app. What do you think? He said, okay, use that for my job, let's talk about it. And we had all these things going good for us, and we started to say, hey, we have to grow this thing really big, and we made commitments, right? So we need to grow our team, we need to get people on board, we need to get Erika on board to help us with some things that we're going to work on. And, this is, I've never talked about this publicly, maybe I shouldn't share it, but I'm going to share it.
You didn't drag me on the bus. Why stop now?
So, we said, hey, Erika, whatever thing you're looking at, come, you'll be perfect for this role, come work with us. And we had other commitments we had made to ourselves, other people, our partners, just like spending a lot of time working on this every day for
Fox was gonna get involved.
18 hours, we had meetings in this, was it this, we were?
No,
the other one, the other one, with, so all these things were in line. And I was like, this is it, this is how we make that $1 billion, we're good, right? And I remember that when the first domino fell was when one of our investors, we were like maybe 3 days from getting the check, and he calls Awah, and Awah calls me and Trevor, our other friend, and he goes, my partner just sued me for a lot of millions of dollars, so until that goes through, I can't give you guys the money I've committed to, and that money was going to be the foundation of what we're going to try to do, right? So that fell through. Other potential investor who we had talked to and had several meetings with, and I reworked and mapped out all kinds of strategy on the board, just all of a sudden just went AWOL, like no call, no show, like just gone. I'm like,
You
okay.
later on found that it was a legitimate reason, but at the time
we're like, so disappeared, like gone, right? So I'm like, well, we still got this other concept with this big company that's gonna be great, and once we do this thing, we'll be okay. And then my friend at this company that we're working with, trying to get this prototype tested out, which is a really big company, it would have been great for us, calls me and he goes, hey man, I've been trying to push this through, but I have to leave because I have another job offer, so I'm gonna leave the company. And I think it's a great idea. I'm gonna let the guy who's taking over my role work with you guys to kind of get this through. And he left the company. But once somebody else new comes into their position,
They're
gonna do what they want to do, right? So we go from, okay, that's, we fly to the Bay Area, we have all these good meetings, and, the new guy who comes into the role eventually just kind of like stops emailing us back, and, it just, we had to admit that, hey guys, this is not working out. We've spent all of our money, all of our time. It's been another, year and a half, and there's no end in sight. We can't meet our commitments we've made to people who have quit their other jobs to come be here. And that was just hard to come to terms with that. And I tell your friends, your coworkers, your colleagues, and say, hey, this is not, we promise you this, we can't do it anymore. And, we're all hurting, but you're hurting the most because we made you sacrifice something. That's kind of like I'm and Erika, sacrifice this whole thing we need to come work with us, and we can't meet the obligations. And that was really hard, right? So, you always think, and one thing I learned from that experience is that whenever it's about money, until the check clears your account and it's sitting there and it's there for like 2 days in case they call back. If you call back and say I made a mistake, until that check clears, you can't count on that money, right? So as an entrepreneur, by default, your nature is to be very optimistic.
Yeah.
But you're always like, oh yeah, you know,
Yeah.
1 in a million chances, great, there's one chance, you know, like, you know, I'm jealous. There's 1 in a million chances, great, it's a chance. So entrepreneurs by nature are very optimistic. So what I always tell people since then is that take your best case scenario of what's gonna happen, in what timeline. Divide that best case scenario from a financial standpoint by half, and at least, and then give yourself double the time you thought it was going to take to get there for it to actually happen, right? So if you thought I'm going to make $1 million in 5 years, you're probably going to make $500,000 in 10 years, right? So like your best case scenario, divide the number by half, multiply the time by 2, right? That's what usually happens, right? So so that's, you know, so that was a big L for me. Not as big as our other L, so it's so many L's. My biggest L is like his third L.
It didn't register.
But again, like we all said, you know, we are back, we pick ourselves back up. So just having the fortitude and the willingness to go back and say, hey, let's start another company and try this again and see what happens. You know, like, you know, and doing that over and over again is really the story, right? Being resilient and going back, and you know, you take L's, you know, but all you need to do is have one win, and then the L's are worth it.
Yeah.
So,
So that was great.
Before we close, do we have any questions from the audience? And we don't really have any online. Anybody has questions online. But do you guys have any questions?
We answered everything.
You're just soaking up all of the knowledge. I know, we'll let one person on the panel answer the questions, since we're gonna wrap it up, so.
Okay. I'm like awesome. Like you talked about Inglewood, like I'm from Inglewood. And I guess like I'm also watching the neighborhood change where there's like a lot of Black owned businesses, and there's like also like the forum being doing like Starbucks like right around the corner. And so I was like wondering how it is to like exist like as a Black woman, like owning land, but also like having to deal with it in this like space that is probably white.
It is very intimidating for sure. You know, I'm going up against people that have, you know, real estate has been in their families for years, and they have a lot of money at their disposal that I don't have, and they can go and knock on somebody's door and offer them a bag of cash, right? I can't do that, right? So I started in my neighborhood where I grew up on the south side of Chicago. So things are also changing. The building that I just bought is like 10 minutes from where I grew up. We have an Inglewood in Chicago as well, which is exactly the same thing that's happening in Inglewood here is happening in Inglewood in Chicago, right? They just put a Whole Foods. They're like, I mean, I'm talking about nobody wants to live in Inglewood at home, right? And then it's like, oh, Whole Foods is here. So who do you think is moving over here now, right? There's a lot of vacant lots and things like that. So right now it's like, while all of these empty buildings, vacant buildings, and land is available, right now I'm trying to figure out how I can get my hands on it before it's all gone, because most of it is already gone. Even though they're not developing it or anything like that, like people are just coming in and just buying it and sitting on it, right? Because they know it's coming. So just trying to make sure that I'm inserting myself in those rooms, right? So it's like, okay, knowing who the alderman is for that neighborhood and other neighborhoods that I want to buy in, just so they know my face, they know my name, they know my business name, right? And just trying to make yourself stand out, right? We have to work harder than everybody else. That's just how it goes, right?
Yeah.
So just what I have learned is just being my authentic self has put me at the top of the list, right? When I didn't realize how much just like walking into a room and just start talking to people, right? And then I realized down the line, like, oh, I was actually talking to so-and-so who, you know, they may be a developer. Like, I met this guy, he was doing commercial real estate for like 20 plus years, right? Older white guy, and we just started talking, right? Randomly, right? And then it's like, oh, what do you do? I was on a flight to Chicago a couple months ago and sat next to a guy, And usually I don't speak to people on planes. I just put my AirPods in. I don't want to be bothered, right? But for whatever reason, I just said hi. And he just started like being super chatty. And he worked for Pepper Construction, which is like a huge construction firm in Chicago. So we exchanged info. He was a senior vice president. And it's like, oh, right? So I say just put yourself out there. If you want to be in the space, know that you deserve to be in that space. As a Black woman, make yourself known. Like, I'm here. I deserve to be here, right? People will try to make you feel uncomfortable. Even when I go to Home Depot, right? Guys will try to mansplain everything to me. It's like, this ain't my first time in here, sir. I know where I'm going, right? Or like when I'm like working on a project, sometimes I have on like overalls or, you know, Timberland boots or whatever. And it's like, oh, that's cute. Like, cute. You know what I mean? But then I see you outside and you're like trying to get some work, right? So then when you see me the second time and I'm pulling up with my guys or whatever in the truck and I could potentially hire you, but I remember that you were the guy that, you know, tried to like, oh, that's a cute little set you have on. It's like, dude, like, I'm not gonna say what I want to say, but you get my drift. Yes. So that's my make yourself seen.
Yeah, I have a question. It kind of has a similar tone, and it's for anyone who wants to answer. So, did you have a moment where you felt like there wasn't a space for you in your field, or where you felt like the space was taken by someone like you? And if so, what motivated you to just create your own space and set yourself apart?
That's a good question.
I feel like I just spoke to that a little bit. So.
You have a space in your field that you feel it's already taken, and then what you did in those circumstances.
So let me say something real quick there, and it's something I've learned recently. This is a problem that as minorities, as Black people, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy because we think that there can only be one of us. Correct. So you assume that, okay, well, that's the person really there, so it can't be me, right? So, I don't know if I have a good example for that personally, but it's just a mindset of thinking that there's enough for everyone, there's enough of this to go around. One of my anecdotes I always think about that I remember is if you're from LA, if you're driving on Slauson, and I think it's Slauson and La Brea. I remember at some point going through it and I stoplight, and I remember looking up and there's literally 4 gas stations, right? It's Slauson and La Brea, there's 1, 2, 3, 4. And I went, wait, so whoever the last person who came here saw 3 other gas stations. And I'm like, you know what? It doesn't matter if somebody's there's Burger King, there's McDonald's, there's all kinds of fast food places, and everyone's making money. So that moment, I remember that moment being in my car going, wow, like the 4th person here was like, okay, there's 3 other gas stations, and I'm gonna be the 4th one, and they're all obviously in business, they're all making money. So never think that this space has been taken by somebody else. You can also be that person.
We experienced that last year when we were starting Yours. The first question we asked is, who's doing this?
Yeah.
This rally,
this
who's doing this, right? And there's something that I say, like I haven't had, similar to Hector, thinking and speaking anecdotes, metaphors. There's room for Pepsi in a world where there's Coke.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Uber, Lyft. I mean,
Lyft.
there's always space. I mean, I think you should make your space.
Yeah.
And create your space and know that. I mean, in film, there's like, thank God it's on the rise now. There's so many more Black people that are becoming executives and producers and getting deals that they hadn't gotten ever, right? And you guys are seeing more Black content, right? That's because of that behind the scenes pushing it forward. Mm-hmm. And so there's like, it's never enough. You know what I'm saying? It's never enough because there's so many areas there's so much area to cover, right? So yeah, I don't think I've ever really, I'm trying to think. I mean, you always, I think as entrepreneurs, all of us have you always have to compare what is already out there. Yeah. That's just the nature of being an entrepreneur in business because you have to know your competition. But I don't think that it's ever stopped anything I've done. I have a thing that I'm working on now and I'm like, it's in the cannabis space. I'm like, oh, Jesus Christ. But it's like, because it's oversaturated here. But my friend's like, yeah, you need to go to like Ohio where they're about to make it legal. Or you need to go here where they're about to do it. I can help you. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Like it's just finding that space and creating it. And he's like, and then come back here. So. Yeah.
To your point, there is actually such a thing as oversaturation, right? And in that scenario, how do you differentiate yourself? How do you stand out from everybody else? It's like, yeah, we're doing more or less the same thing, but mine is cooler, and this is why you're gonna come to me over going to, you know, some place. It's like that key differentiator. Sometimes it's, you know, I think for Rares, our key differentiator is we make it more inclusive and easier for you to feel like you're part of the culture, whereas some of our competitors, I think they're more transactional, right?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
we have a community feel
something.
to it, right? That's a key differentiator. A classic example is Venmo and PayPal, incidentally owned by PayPal. Why do people use Venmo and not PayPal? They do the same thing, right?
Or Cash App.
Oh, Cash App, right. The differentiator with Venmo in particular is that it's social. Both of those services are designed to move money. One of them is probably as successful as the other because it's key differentiators. Because I can send money to somebody and share that experience with my friends.
I mean, one thing we did, this is super quick, with Barack the Vote, when we created the t-shirt for the design back in 2007. And my brother asked me to design the logo because he was, he didn't even ask me. He was like, I'm trying to do this, can you help me? And I was like, I'll do it, like, give it here, this is what I do. And we did it, and one of our main things was like, yeah, but we want this to be like cool. We don't want this to be like other like campaign shirts. You know, we're cool, we're young, we want this to be like that shirt. We want people to be able to wear this to the club and be like, no, this is what's hot. And they didn't. And that's how we stood out. You know, like it stood out amongst every other dumb campaign shirt you'd ever seen. And it was just because it was cool. We made it cool, we thought it was cool, we made people believe it was cool, and so they did. And that's, you know, we made it different than everyone else out there. We set it out to be different, you know? So that's it. That's a really great point.
And I always say, for me, I'm always like, what's for me will never pass me by.
Yeah.
And so knowing, you know, what's for you is for you, and it won't miss you at all. It doesn't matter how many people are in the space, how much competition you have, it will not pass you. And really understanding that. Well, thank you all so much. This was so good. Let's give it a round of applause. And we have some gifts for you guys on the table. We have some very cool Go For Yours apparel, and the next book, Don't Wait, Create, that we want you to have. And so we just really appreciate you all for opening our weekend of the Dream Experience up. I really
Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
I would just spend it home on the couch. I just chilling.
Before we completely wrap up, right, I don't know if it's on the program in any way, shape, or form. Just if you want to, you have questions you never got around to asking, track me down on LinkedIn.
Same.
And reach out. I'm more than glad to take the time and share.
Do you guys have LinkedIn? Maybe that's something we can
Same.
do. Create
LinkedIn,
I'm
on
actually
Instagram.
Instagram.
Yeah. I mean, if you contact me, I'll usually just email you. But I respond to all those. I'll just like take it back to old school. But you can find me on there.
Yeah, Instagram. And if you guys have questions and find out how, you could just send them to me and I'll connect you guys.
Yeah, please do.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you guys. This was great. Thank you guys for watching live. How many people did we have?
I didn't look.
Oh.
But there was people I'll go, they'd be like 9, 11, 12, like popping in and out.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for joining live, and we have another live panel tomorrow evening with a group of creators. Nice.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Nice.
I, by the way, I didn't want your company on theirs because I'm like, I can't.
So we have, the fun thing about raising money is that you have a target in mind.